Consider that 50,000 people marched the same day in one Labor Day parade in New York City just 5 days after Labor Day, and that 40,000 people attended a firefighters' memorial at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles the same day. Then even the high-end estimate from a public affairs officer for the District of Columbia Fire Department, 75,000 people at a 9/12 march in Washington, is not a particularly impressive number when interested citizens were supposedly gathering from all across the United States, population 300 million, which is why, in our third story on the countdown, a bevy of hacks continues to inflate its lies about the scores of ordinary Americans who were there. The 9/12 protest, aka political road rage, drew 60 to 75,000 people by the only reliable measure, independent measure, cited thus far, an unofficial estimate from a public affairs officer for the D.C. Fire Department. But according to Glenn Beck, today, that number was actually 24 times greater.
We had a university, I think it's the University of, I don't remember which university it is. Look at the pictures, and you know they can do body space and calculate. 1.7 million that crowd was estimated.
In Washington?
In Washington,
wow.
D.C.
Because
Yep.
we were saying tens of thousands.
Oh, of course, everybody was saying tens of thousands, because that's the official report. If you look at the pictures, university looked at it, did the body count, et cetera, et cetera, 1.7 million.
1.7 million is a troubling number if you're in politics, because you'd think, if that many people showed up. But since when? We've got a time-lapse photo as people stream from
that looks like the 30,000 or 70,000, please.
Yeah, that's.
I've lived in Washington, D.C.
Me too. That is, that's north of 500,000.
Yeah.
The University of I Don't Remember. Despite the momentary attempt to rein in Mr. Beck, Cluster Fox and friends consistently inflated the numbers to eventually hundreds of thousands. Of course, the lies began at the protest itself. An organizer claimed ABC News had reported that 1 to 1.5 million people were there. That organizer, Matt Kibbe of Freedom Works, later recanted. ABC News correctly denied ever having reported such a number. It is a distortion then promulgated by Michelle Malkin, who wrote on her website that ABC News put the crowd at 2 million people. Why don't you go for 2 trillion? And a different kind of lie that day from Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina, saying to the crowd, quote, "The New York Times just reported that 500 people showed up here." But getting back to the primary lie already in progress, Boss Limbaugh said the crowd was 2 million strong, citing a British tabloid that had reported no such thing. And Lou Dobbs on his radio show said the number, quote, reached well over 1 million. Let's bring in the Washington editor of The Nation, Chris Hayes. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, comrade.
Thank you. The phony number, we're all White Sox fans now. I knew there was an actual hypnosis in progress. The phony numbers on the 9/12 protests, there were even some postings by some blogs of a 10-year-old photo from a different rally to make the crowd seem bigger than it was. Is this all part of the war room-like propaganda campaign that follows something like this, especially if it does not meet expectations?
Well, look, this is an age-old dynamic, right, in which there's a big protest or a rally, the organizers claim one figure, and then the police, the Park Service, whoever claims another. And usually the protests are happening on the left, and there's some skepticism about the official numbers, but usually there's some sort of spectrum, right? The protesters say X, or they say 2X, and the police say X, right? So there's like this, it's like 2 times or 1 time the amount. Here you have this crazy inflated number that's so obviously manifestly, laughably false, and yet I think it's a fascinating case study in how the right is able to just wrench things from the fantasy world and kind of make them fact by repetition. And we'll see. Who knows? Maybe a month from now, mainstream news sources or politicians will be citing the 2 million figure. It might even not take that long.
24 times greater, the official estimate, was the one that the gentleman quoted today from the University of I Don't Remember. The University of I Don't Remember, does that not sort of say it all?
Yes, it does say it all. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, there's not really any need for him to even pretend to cite something, right? I mean, Glenn Beck could have just said, look to me like 2 million, and that would have served the propagandistic purpose just as well as pretending to cite at a university he couldn't remember the name of. So, there's a certain kind of self-contained reality to this whole thing, and watching the number pinball around the right-wing blogs, and as you noted in the lead-in, shows that in some ways he was sort of trying to gild the lily, I think, by even attaching a sort of airsats credibility to it.
Well, also, is part of this, if they put out a no, great expectations to begin with and 75,000 people showed up, that might have been actually pretty impressive that they get that. That's a pretty big crowd. But instead there's this bunkum about 2 million and the University of I don't remember. Would actually impressing people with a low ball here have been better for those who are making this argument? Or do these people actually want or need to make it into a dispute with the mainstream media? If they had gotten 750,000 people, in other words, would they have still claimed 2 million just to have the dispute?
That's interesting. I actually don't think it's about the dispute. I mean, I think you're right that this was actually a really impressive bit of organizing. I mean, yes, you have a 24-hour cable news network, broadcasting it all the time, and 75,000 people is not that many. But Democrats and progressives, I think, take the sort of poo-poo it at their peril. I mean, it was a very impressive bit of organizing, and what it does show is a depth of feeling. There's 60 million people in this country who voted against Barack Obama, right? A lot of them really, really don't like this president, don't like the direction the country's going, don't like the Democratic Party, don't like anything that smacks of progressivism, socialism, whatever, and they're real worked up, and they're organized, and they're mobilized. So there's a definite degree to which the march shows the intensity. What it doesn't show is the breadth of that sentiment. And what inflating the number about is, what that's all about is confusing one for the other. And if they can do that, they win a huge political victory. I was at a dinner last night with a Democratic congressman, and you can tell he already thinks that this is a much bigger portion of public opinion than it actually is numerically. And so I think inflating the numbers is a way of converting that intensity among a relatively small group of people into something that is a majority or widely shared view, and I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, but a SpongeBob SquarePants rally hyped by another cable network would have drawn 500,000 to the Capitol easily. Do we have any idea? Why Beck didn't show up to his own event?
Oh, I don't know. The restaurants are better in New York. I have no idea.
He was trying to remember the name of the university. That's the correct answer. He spent all weekend trying to remember the name of the university.
Yeah, it's a pain to schlep the body space counting equipment down to Washington.
Wasamata U. Chris Hayes of The Nation. Great thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Keith.
Gonna have sweatshirts made.